Welcome to today's lecture, which will be a very first introduction to programming in Python. And before we start with the actual content, the most important thing is don't panic if you don't understand everything. So it's very natural that there will be some parts of what I will talk about that you don't fully understand right now, but this will become clear definitely in the course of the semester. So the goal for today is to just get a very first overview and understanding of the basics of programming in Python. So the first thing that I want to explain is what is programming all about? How does it actually work? What is it that you do there? And then secondly, we will talk about three core concepts of every programming language, and in particular Python. The first is what are variables, the second is what are loops, and the third is what are if conditions. And these three are very important parts of every program that you would write in your whole career. So before we go into these details of what are variables, what are loops, and what are if conditions, and what is programming, we will explain all this with a certain example. Namely, we will program today a simple computer game. And this will be, of course, not such a fancy game as Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever your favorite computer game is. Instead, we will write a very simple number guessing game in which the computer chooses a secret number, and then the user, so we, are supposed to guess the number. So we first guess maybe 50, and then the computer will tell us your guess was too big or too small, or after several guesses, probably once we get the right number, it will tell us, okay, you now guessed correctly the secret number I chose, and in total you took 7 tries or whatever. So here on the left, you see an example execution of this program, how we want this program to work in the end. Before we go into the actual coding of this game, let me tell you what programming is actually all about. And the fundamental issue of programming is that computers are kind of stupid, so they can only do very simple operations. They can calculate with numbers, they can do addition and multiplication and division and so on, and they can compare different objects. Like if you have two numbers, you can ask, are these numbers equal, or is one less than the other, or something like this. And then you can do different actions depending on the result of such comparisons. So you can say, if x is less than y, then do this and this, and if x is bigger than y, then instead do something else. And programming means to look at the thing you want the computer to do and to formulate it in terms of these very simple operations. So just comparing stuff, adding, multiplying, and doing if then else and stuff like this. And this is one of the most important things one has to get used to, or to understand how one can translate a given problem into a sequence of such simple operations. And doing this is called like formulating the algorithm to the problem one wants to solve. So before we go into actually coding in Python, let us somehow try to translate what our program here, this number guessing game, should do in terms of these very simple operations. So this is what we're doing here. So on the left, you again see the example execution of our program, and on the right, you see a so-called flow chart. So this is just a chart where we start at start, and then we follow the chart, or actually the computer is supposed to follow the chart and always in each step do what is written in these different boxes. So what we do here is we use the three variables, which we will discuss in more detail later what these are: guess, tries, and secret. Let's start with secret. This is the secret number that the computer chooses in the beginning. Then guess will always contain the value guessed by the user in the current step. So if the computer tells me your guess and then I enter 50, then guess should be 50. And tries is the number of tries that the user has already tried to guess the correct number. So this is what we do here in the beginning. And then we always execute this big loop that you see downstairs. So what we always do is we ask, did the user guess correctly? Is guess equal to secret? If yes, then we just print, you guessed correctly and it took you this and this many tries, and the program is at the end. In the more interesting case, if the user has not guessed correctly, we then ask the user to give us a new guess. So we read the variable guess from the user. We increase tries by 1 because the user used up an additional try. And then we compare, is the new guess less than the secret number or bigger than the secret number? We print out the corresponding message, your guess is too small or your guess is too big, and we go again back to the beginning of this so-called loop. And this we do again and again and again until the user eventually guesses correctly. And the reason why in the beginning we set guess equal to 0 is because this ensures that the initial guess before the user has entered anything is false, right? The secret number is between 1 and 100. So if the user guesses 0 at the beginning, this is always a false guess. And then we go into this loop and let the user guess. So now we somehow converted our idea of what the program should do into a formal flow chart. So this already breaks down the thing we want the computer to do into these very simple operations, just compare numbers and do if then else and so on. And now the next question is, how does one go from this flow chart here to an actual Python program? And this is what we're going to discuss now. So again, the programming language we will use is called Python. And the reason this is because it's very beginner friendly, it's easy to learn, it's completely free, so you can download it for free. And it's very widely used, in particular in data science. So the programming language is Python, and the actual program in which you will write your code, this is called an IDE. This will be Visual Studio Code, which again is freely available for download. On this link that is written on the slide, you will find a tutorial on how to install Python and Visual Studio Code and how to get both running. We will see in the second part of this video how we actually use Visual Studio Code to write the program. But now let's explore the three concepts of variables, if conditions, and loops in Python. So first of all, what is a variable? You can imagine a variable roughly like a box that is in the memory of the computer. And on the box, in the front, there is a text, which is the name of the variable. And inside the box is the value of the variable. So for example, if you write a equals 42, then we tell Python, please create a new variable with name a, so a new box, write a on the front, and put the value 42 inside the box. And then we can use the variable a. For example, if you write a times 2, then what Python will do is it will search for the box with name a on it, look inside, find the value 42, multiply it with 2, and give us the result, which is 84. And of course, variables are called variables because their value is variable, so you can change the value. So if there is already this variable a with value 42, and you then write a equals 3, this tells Python, go to the box with name a on it, throw the value 42, and put in the new value 3. So now the value of a is 3 instead of 42. This you also see here. If you now write a times 2, you will get the result 6 instead of 84. And finally, you can also write things like a equals a plus 1, which looks a bit strange from a mathematical perspective. But this just means take the old value of a, which in this case is 3, add 1 to it, which gives 4, and put this new value 4 into a. So effectively what we're doing is we're increasing a by 1. And again, you will get used to this more and more in the course of the whole semester. Just one warning for the beginner, this is kind of counterintuitive. One single equal sign is an assignment, so writing a equals 3 means put the value 3 into the variable a, whereas if you want to check if two variables are the same, if you want to check is x equal to y, you need to write x equal y. So next, what are if conditions? So the point is, if you have a Python program, by default, it just executes line by line. So it first executes line 1, and then line 2, and then line 3, and so on, which is quite boring and doesn't leave a lot of options for the program to make decisions. But there are so-called if conditions with which the program can branch into two different code blocks. So for example here, if you write x equals 3, and then you have this if condition, if x bigger than 0, then do the stuff in this first block, so print x is positive, and otherwise if x is less or equal than 0, print x is negative. So in this case, this will print x is positive because x is 3, which is positive. But if you would change the value of x to -3, then this code would print x is negative. What is quite important here is that, or to note that in Python, code blocks are determined by indentation of the code. So this means all the code that you want to be executed if x is bigger than 0 needs to be indented and at the same level of indentation. This will also become more clear in the second video. As the final concept, we will now discuss the concept of loops, and this allows you to execute a block of code several times, again and again, until some condition is not satisfied anymore. So as the example here, let's look at this code. So we first set x equal to 1, so x is now 1, and then we come to this while loop. And how such a while loop works is we first check the condition after the while. So we check, is x less than 10? 1 is less than 10, yes. So we go into the body of the while loop. This indented piece of code is called the body of the loop. We print x, so this prints 1. We increase x by 1, so x is now 2. And then the body of the loop is finished, so we go again to the beginning of the while loop. We again check, is x less than 10? 2 is less than 10, yes. So we go into the body of the loop again. We print x, which prints 2. We increase x by 1, so x is now 3. We are finished with the body of the loop. We again go to the beginning of the while loop, check, is x less than 10? Yes. So we again go into the body of the loop, and this repeats again and again and again. After we have printed 9, then after printing 9, x is 10, then we again go to the top of the loop. We check, is x less than 10? X is now equal to 10, so it's not less than 10. So we finish the loop and print text that is, execute the code that is after the loop. So in this case, we print after the loop. And again, the body of the loop, so all the code that should be executed again and again and again, needs to be indented, and it needs to be at a common level of indentation. We will again see this in the next video when we actually implement the code. So now we have understood roughly in Python what are variables, what are if conditions, and what are loops. So now we can finally sit down and code our guessing game in Python.